Hey team, this is Casey.
And this is Shannon, and you're listening to 8 Count Breakdown.
Your home for all things college dance all in one place. Have you ever watched a routine at nationals and thought, wait, why did that get deducted? Or is that even allowed? Well, we're hoping to clear some of that up with this episode.
In today's episode, we're breaking down the UDA College Nationals rules, regulations, and score sheet. What actually matters, what teams are being judged on, and why certain details can make or break a routine.
This episode is perfect for anyone hoping to understand the rhyme and reason behind the judges' table.
We're walking through everything from spirit videos and division breakdowns to safety rules and deductions.
Throughout this episode, we're sharing insights straight from UDA itself. So if you've ever questioned a rule or wondered why something is enforced the way it is, stay tuned.
Whether you're deep in the dance world or just along for the ride, we're so glad you're here. So let's get into it.
Happy New Year, everybody. This is our very first episode of 2026. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're so grateful for everybody that joined us in 2025, and we cannot wait to see where this podcast goes this year. As you can tell, we are not in our typical setting. Shan, where are you?
I am in Illinois at my parents' house. We are recording this episode over winter break, so we're a little long distance right now.
I'm glad that you are having a nice, cozy holiday season, and I hope everybody that's listening also had a very cozy, happy holiday season as well, and a very safe and wonderful new year. That means it is finally January, which means it is finally Dance Super Bowl month. I cannot wait. We are so close. I can taste it.
We're so excited. And that is why we were recording long distance, because it is not time to slow down over the holidays. This is when things ramp up for the dance world. So we are here more than ever.
Yes. And we really hope that with nationals right around the corner, that today's episode kind of helps everybody have a deeper understanding of what goes into a nationals routine. You see the athletes out there on the floor doing the choreography and doing the skills, but why are they choreographing the way that they are? Why are they doing skills the way that they are? We're hoping that this episode kind of helps you guys have a deeper understanding of everything. I do want to note, we talked about what the judges are looking for back in episode 4 and broke down kind of each line item of the score sheet back then. So if you haven't already, go listen to that one now. I think it'll give you a better understanding going into this episode.
So today we're going to be talking more about the rules and regulations, why deductions might happen, safety issues, kind of all of those things.
In the show notes, I will be linking all of the score sheets and the rules and regulations if you guys want to go and look at them yourself. But let's dive into it. We're going to get started talking about the spirit video. So what is a spirit video? Why is it important? What does it have to do with UDA College Nationals?
For those of you who have watched UDA Nationals in the past, sometimes you'll see before they play the team's routine, they'll play a little portion of their spirit video. So that's kind of what we're talking about right now, is that little video clip that they play at the beginning of their routine.
So for a spirit video, all teams are required to submit a spirit video. It's a 30 to 45 second video showcasing a team's community and campus involvement. Teams can film examples of their community involvement at a variety of activities like game days, parades, pep rallies, pre-post game events, community service, so on and so forth. Each team's video must include at least 5 different examples of their community involvement. Teams should make sure to show the team interacting with members of the community, so their video must show the team as well as said audience. And all footage must be current. You want to showcase crowd engagement props, signs, flags, chants, band dances, and then for cheer, and it kind of ties into dance a little bit too. So in cheer, there are different group sizes, correct? So one university can send a small all-girl group, or they have a co-ed group, or they have stunt doubles. So every single one of those has to submit a different video. It has to include the members that are in that routine. So one university can't just have an overarching spirit video for all of their divisions. For dance specifically, they are different categories, but it's still the same team. So UNLV, for example, could use the same spirit video for their pom, hip hop, and game day routines because it's the same team. So I wanted to touch on why the spirit video is a thing, because we look at it and we think this, like, what is the point of this? And I think the spirit video is a great way to showcase how much more a team does for its university. I think we've talked about it time and time again about how it's so much more than what you see on the nationals floor. And at its core, UDA and UCA has a mission to help teams across the nation lead, represent, and elevate their campuses and communities. And I believe that the spirit video helps to enforce that and make sure that these teams are kind of staying involved in their communities. Yes, they have their nationals routine and they have their separate events, but they are also big contributing members of their campuses and their communities. So the spirit video is ensuring that all of that is still happening.
So now we're talking about dance divisions. There's just a couple of things to note here. Teams must have 7 to 20 dancers. So minimum of 7, maximum of 20 dancers in each category, except for game day. That category you can have up to 30. And then 25% of dancers have to be the same in both dances. So you know how teams compete and do 2 dances plus game day if they choose to. So in those 2 dances they compete in, jazz, pom, or hip hop, 25% of the dancers have to be the same. And then male dancers do not need to use poms in the pom category. I feel like a lot of teams do, but some don't, and that is allowed.
Okay, time limitations. So for pom, jazz, and hip hop routines, teams have a time limit of 2 minutes. And for game day routines that consist of fight songs, game situations, and a performance routine, the maximum time is 3 minutes. This includes transitions between sections. The time starts when the fight song starts with any choreographed movements or chants, or 30 seconds after the allotted time after a team is announced. So whichever happens first. What that means is after a team is announced and they're coming on the floor, they have 30 seconds to get set. And if they're not set at that point, then the time starts anyways, and their 3 minutes or 2 minutes starts at that time. For pom, jazz, and hip hop, routines timing begins from the first choreographed move or music note, whichever comes first, and then ends with the last choreographed move or note of music, whichever is last. If a team doesn't follow this, then penalties are applied to their score. For 1 to 5 seconds, a half point is deducted. For 6 or more seconds, 1.5 points are deducted. And this sounds very intimidating, and like penalties would happen all the time. But luckily, they've kind of implemented this exception to the rule. They've allowed room for like slower human reaction time or technical sound system errors if there's like a delay after pressing play. So they don't issue a deduction until 3 seconds over said allowed time. I know it says for 1 to 5 seconds, but I think they start getting a little stricter about it around 4 seconds. And then if there's any question about it, there is time for a routine to be reviewed if needed, and it can be retimed. But if the routine is retimed, then the 3-second allowance isn't considered during the situation because they can have like a clear vision of when that time starts and when that ends.
So this is kind of similar to what Casey was just talking about. With entrances and exits, teams have 30 seconds from the team's introduction to start the routine. So kind of like you were talking about in game day, they have 30 seconds before their time starts. For pom, jazz, and hip hop, they have 30 seconds to start the routine, and if they don't, they actually get a deduction for that. So it's like a 1/4 point deduction if you're under 5 seconds, and a 1/2 point deduction if you're 6 or more seconds over that 30-second window. Entrances are technically not judged, but deductions can still happen with those time limitations. Entrances cannot involve dance, technical skills, or traditions chants. So they want people to get on in a timely manner. You walk on, you've got that 30 seconds to start your routine. Same with an exit. No excessive celebrations are allowed following the team's performance. So they give a really long laundry list of what that includes, but I feel like you can picture what that looks like. Jumping up and down, throwing flips, flipping your hair, just like a good wave, I feel like is what we normally see that is acceptable, and you will receive a full point deduction if anything that you do qualifies as an excessive celebration.
The rules and regulations also had this general guidelines section. I'd say it's mostly about how coaches are running things and how practices are run. Teams must have an emergency action plan in case of injuries. Coaches are responsible for taking their team's well-being into account and limiting them if necessary. So if your team is all getting injured or all sick, not pushing them past that limit, I think this is just kind of in place to ensure athlete safety and health. It talks about where practices should be held, locations suitable for dance, away from noise and distraction. I feel like that isn't always possible. As a dancer, I think all dancers can think of a time where they were in an unconventional practice space and you practice where you can. But I appreciate you, varsity and UDA, for trying.
I'm hoping it's getting better. But yeah, when we were dancing growing up, it was,
I have danced in cafeterias.
That's what I was going to say. It was always the cafeteria.
Tennis courts, like
parking lots.
Name it. Parking lots.
We practiced in the parking lot at Worlds.
We also practiced in a tennis court.
Yes, we did.
I remember that. And then the rest of this section is just general practice guidelines to ensure a team's well-being and safety. Make sure to warm up and stretch. Dance on proper flooring, watch out for obstructions, don't perform technical skills on concrete, and coaches must attend all practices. So pretty miscellaneous general guidelines.
So the next section was all about competition guidelines. We'll talk about the floor, the choreography, costuming, and props. So with regards to the floor, teams cannot bring any unused props onto the floor. One of the things they mentioned was that the center of the floor is marked already. So I guess in the past, like teams used to bring like a stuffed animal or something to like set on the center. And so that's one of like the unused props that they're talking about. Like you can't bring like anything to like set on the front of the floor, even if it's not like marking the center. You can't bring anything onto the floor that you're not using in your dance. Sometimes you'll see teams dance off of the floor. And in the past, I used to be like, don't they get a deduction for that? So there's no penalty for leaving the performance floor. So you can leave the Marley. Like sometimes teams will like use so much of the floor that a dancer on the end will be off the Marley, and that is fine. But you cannot leave the performance area. So you can't have someone behind the castle or something like during the dance. You have to be in the performance area. Moving on to choreography and costuming. So you are not allowed to have any inappropriate language or choreography in your routine. Shoes on both feet are recommended, but not required. You are not allowed to have any shoes with wheels. That was interesting that they clarified. No roller skates, no Heelys. And then you're not allowed to wear only socks or footed tights. So that I thought was an interesting clarification too, because I feel like that's very common now in the studio world. People will wear socks to dance in. They have like specific dance socks, just because I think for safety reasons, it's too slippery to do that. This was another interesting one. Because you're at Disney World, you're not allowed to wear any Disney costumes that resemble a Disney character or use any Disney music or theme. Like any Disney music or theme requires like prior approval. I'm curious if that's like because people are like walking around Disney World, they don't want someone else in a Disney character costume or something.
I do know in Disney World, you're not allowed to wear costumes that resemble or would make people believe that you are a character. But I mean, probably for like licensing and then
and because
Disney
like,
is very strict about that too.
Last thing with costuming that I thought was interesting too is jewelry as part of the costume is allowed. And I feel like dancing growing up, like jewelry was always like, no, you can't wear any jewelry while you're dancing. And I know like earrings are like people wear earrings now, but like necklaces and stuff. It didn't mention any specifics. It just said jewelry as part of the costume is allowed. Take
like a chain for hip hop. Just a nice fat chain around your neck.
I love that.
Just iced out.
And then props. We talked about props a little bit already, but kind of going in more in depth, props are allowed in all categories. They must fit through a 36-inch door. Handheld props must be soft and they can be tossed dancer to dancer if they're soft, but not into the audience. And then hard props cannot be tossed at all. Props cannot have the ability to bear the weight of the dancers, even if you don't use them. So like we're talking like chairs, stools, benches, those sorts of things. You're not allowed to use those props at all, even if a dancer doesn't use them. Like even if it doesn't end up bearing the weight of a dancer and it's not used for that intention, you're just not allowed to have something that could bear the weight of a dancer. And then hip overhead skills with props are prohibited, and props cannot be used to conceal or cover any portion of choreography, movement, skills, tricks, or lifts that need to be viewable by a legality official. And a half-point deduction will be given for any prop that intentionally conceals or covers any portion of choreography, movement, skills, tricks, or lifts. And I thought that was interesting because LSU's umbrella last year covered a lot But I feel like it probably didn't cover anything that they needed to view for legality purposes.
The thing that I can think of is like if somebody put a sign up somewhere and then somebody behind them did a skill that's illegal.
Right.
Because of the rules and
or
regulations.
Like was getting into like a skill that was illegal, but they wanted to show like a different part of the skill that was legal. So
interesting.
Pretty specific there.
Okay, so that kind of leads us into safety rules, and they have a whole section on rules to make sure that the athletes are safe when they're performing tumbling skills, lifts, partner parts, release moves, unassisted dismounts, all kinds of good stuff. So specifically for tumbling and skills, any hip overhead skills with hand support, like a cartwheel, athletes cannot have palms in their supporting hand. So that cartwheel would probably have to be one-handed, unless you're putting your palms down, which you can up to 20% of the routine. So if you want to do a two-handed cartwheel, you got to set the palms down. But if you just want a one-handed cartwheel, you just have to transfer your palms to your hand that is not supporting the weight of your body. There is an exception, though, for forward rolls and backwards rolls. So another exception, palms are allowed during these skills. So if you're doing a two-handed cartwheel, if you have a hands-free palm, you can do a two-handed cartwheel. But if a non-hands-free palm, so if you are holding the palm, touches the ground on a skill with or without hand support, a 0.5 deduction is given.
And just so people who maybe aren't as familiar with palm know, a hands-free palm is one that has like a strap across your hand. So you can like open up your hand and touch the ground and the palm is still like strapped around the top of your hand. A non-hands-free palm is like one with a bar in the middle that like you physically have to hold. And they don't allow you to like just put your own like ponytail or like strap around your palm to make it hands-free. Like it has to be like manufactured as a hands-free palm with that just like elastic strap.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, because prior to ever doing palm, I was like, how do they even hold those things? They just hold on to the little strings.
No, even now I'm like looking at people and they make a lot of different palms now. And I'm like, what kind of palm is that? Like they have ones that I swear have like just a handle at the bottom. Like not like a bar in the middle, like just like a little thing.
Yeah. Just like a little plastic thing, and it's just the palm, like,
and then the palm is just like
around
on top.
the top of your knuckle. Yeah. Totally. There are definitely teams that have that. I have yet to see one up close. Maybe I'll go Google an image just to look at it. But like when you're watching these dances and you're like, what is going on with their palms? I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think you're right. After 7 years of NFL cheering, I prefer the bar. I don't think I could do it any other way. But
it would feel so weird.
It's just something secure about like being able to hold it. I feel like if I opened my hand, it would just fly off.
Yes.
But that's
like
just
Ohio last year when they had like that little string attached to their palm and were like flinging it around. Mine would have gone flying.
I would have let go. Don't trust me with that. So for hip overhead rotations with hand support, teams are limited to 3 connecting skills. So an example of that would be 3 consecutive back handsprings, but 4 are not allowed. Like you can do 3 back handsprings back to back to back, but if you did a 4th, no. And then hip overhead skills with hand support, but are approached in an airborne manner, so that would be like a dive roll. They are allowed, provided they can only connect with one other hip overhead skill. Full twisting backflips are not permitted, which I believe is also referred to as a back full. And then dive rolls are allowed if the peak of the dive does not surpass the shoulder height and the weight is distributed to the hands before the head, neck, and shoulders on the landing. There is no simultaneous tumbling over and under another dancer. So I don't know how you could possibly do that unless you had crazy high jumps. And then no knee drops are allowed, as well as drops to the thigh, back, front, head, shoulder, or seat, unless the dancers use their hands to catch them first. And bear with me, dancers are allowed to land in a push-up position if they are coming from a standing or kneeling position or from a jump with forward momentum. But any variation of a Shushanova are not allowed. What is a Shushanova? You've possibly seen modified versions in gymnastics, as they're also banned in gymnastics, but the athlete does a toe touch, bringing their legs to the side and then back behind them, and then they catch themselves with their hands first on the way down, belly down. That's a Shushanova. And then examples of skills allowed are aerials, front and back handsprings, front and back walkovers, back tucks. Examples of skills not allowed are the Shushanova, no-handed head spring, a toe pitch back tuck, full twisting backflips, just no twisting in the air like you would do on I feel like you see it mostly in all-star cheer, maybe even in UCA cheering too, where they're doing twisting in the middle of the air. For lifts and partnering, the dancer executing a skill that is receiving support from a teammate, the supporting dancer must keep direct contact throughout the completion of the skill until the executing dancer has their feet on the ground and is upright. You can't execute any cheer-like lifts, so no extensions while you're in the air, no pyramids, no basket tosses, and you can swing in and out of lifts from a prone, which is like a flat, or a supine position. And then also release moves or unassisted dismounts. A dancer may jump, leap, step, or push off of another dancer if, at the highest point of the released skill, the executing dancer's feet do not go above the head of a supporting dancer. And then toe pitch back tucks are not allowed. So what that is I put my foot in Shannon's hand and she pushes for me to do a backflip. Cannot do that because it's unassisted. And all of these rules, there's a rhyme and reason to them. They want to keep the athletes safe, try to prevent injury as much as possible. Next, I want to talk about the performance area. So maybe you've wondered about the Marley. I've seen teams posting videos lately about having to outline the floor before every practice with tape, but here's kind of what they go off of in order to know where to mark those. There are 10 panels of Marley floor. Marley is vinyl flooring with a controlled grip. So enough grip when needed to prevent tripping, falling, injuries, but slide when desired, which is great for turns and if you do a knee slide or who knows, but you can kind of have more control over your slipping and sliding compared to a basketball floor. You can't really, you're slipping. You're going to slip on the basketball floor. And then each panel is 5 feet by 3.5 inches wide, and the full floor is 53.5 feet by 53.5 feet. And dancers can't jump off any raised surfaces. I don't know what that could possibly be because props aren't allowed, but you never know.
The possibilities are endless. There's probably something we haven't thought of, right? So this is just kind of a summary of the legalities and deductions that we've talked about. They kind of have 4 categories of deductions. There's a quarter point, a half point, a full point, and a 1.5. So I'm just going to quickly go through what is under each of those categories. A quarter point deduction will be taken for failing to start the routine within 30 seconds by that 1 to 5 second time window. If they're only 1 to 5 seconds over that, that'll be a quarter point. Same with not following any of the costume or shoe rules. A half point deduction is performance errors, so any skills or tricks executed incorrectly that then make them illegal. And then being 6 or more seconds over that 30-second window from the team being announced, and other routine timing infractions. And same with prop rules. So not following any of those prop rules that we mentioned results in a half point deduction. Once you get to that 1 point category of deductions, you're looking at general rule violations, which can be some more severe prop rules, excessive celebrations, music during game day transitions, recorded or overlaid voiceovers on the music tracks during game day songs, etc. And then 1.5 point deductions are timing infractions of 6 or more seconds over time, and then routine safety rule violations. So that's just, they get very serious about the safety of dancers, which is great because we want to protect the dancers. And something cool with UDA is you can submit videos of choreography ahead of time to UDA. They have a specific email address that head coaches are allowed to submit videos to double check the legality of a move. So they're allowed to submit that choreography as long as it's in by January 6th. So head coaches, you've got 24 hours to submit that video. If you submit it by January 6th, you're guaranteed a response. So they will let you know if your move is legal or not.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's actually very helpful. I wanted to touch on the game day guidelines. And when we were recapping last year's nationals, that ended up giving me a few more questions that needed to be answered. So I'm really glad that we're doing this episode today because it answered some of those for me, which was lovely. So there are 5 separate game day divisions: the D1A dance game day, D1 dance game day, open dance game day, and the D1A Spirit Program game day. And that is just the NCAA Division I FBS teams. So that's the football bowl subdivision. So all the teams that are normally in D1A. And then there is only an open Spirit Program game day. So for Spirit Program, there's only D1A and open. And all the other teams, so that is NCAA Division I FCS football championship subdivision. So all other D1 teams, D2, D3, junior colleges, NAIA, everybody except D1A FBS teams are in that open Spirit program game day. I'm not sure why that is. I'm curious if it's just because there weren't enough teams to create a D1 division, and maybe there will be in the future. I guess we'll see.
And I am guessing the same thing you are. I think it's probably number of participants in that division. And I think, we'll see it grow over the coming years.
We will dive more into Game Day Live in the future. I think for this Nationals, we will focus on the main game day category. But I wanted to note that there are also 4 UDA Game Day Live divisions, D1A Dance Game Day Live, Open Dance Game Day Live, and it's the same thing. There's no D1 in that one. So all the D1A schools are in the D1A category. All the other teams, D1 through D3, NAIA junior colleges are on the open. And then there's also D1A Spirit Program Game Day Live and Open Spirit Program Game Day Live. Same thing. And then teams add a pep band and drumline to their performances for the live division. So I think that may be what makes it different. And then the order. So the game day performance must be done in the order of fight song first, game situation second, and performance routine. And in looking over the rules and regulations, my question from episode 6 was answered. The band song that plays while they do a dance is called a game day timeout. So this is done with band music, traditional team music, and designed for crowd interaction. So the band music dance goes with the game situation, not the performance routine. The performance routine is strictly any style they want, mainly for entertainment. It's about 30 seconds, and this is usually where the teams are showcasing their own individual strengths and energy and what makes them great. But the game situation, before I move on, also includes the situational sideline. So that's when a team is cheering on the defense, getting the crowd loud during a third down. Hey, we just got a first down and now we want a touchdown, get the ball back in basketball. So a game situation has to include that element of the situation as well as the game day timeout with the band music. There must be a clear separation between the elements with no music or voiceovers guiding the way. I believe that's a change this year. Before they would say like, all right, Raiders, that's a first down. And then the team would start cheering the team onto a touchdown. But now there's none of that. Just the team has to be able to clearly identify, okay, we just finished our fight song and now we're cheering on the team to X, Y, and Z without any explanation of what's happening. And then spirit raising props are recommended but not required. What is allowed are signs, palms, megaphones, flags, rally towels, and then no other props besides the ones that I just listed are allowed, and no musical instruments are allowed. I'm curious if anybody has tried that before or if they're just trying to get ahead of it.
A big old tuba on the floor.
I love that tuba tooting away. You know me.
So we emailed UDA to get more information about judging. So they were very gracious in their response and answered all of our questions. So this is coming straight from UDA. They let us know that there are 6 judges for every category. This is all specific to college nationals, not their other competitions. But most judges are assigned to one category throughout the event, and at most 2 categories if their second is game day. So it's a lot like teams can compete in 2 categories, 3 if they're doing game day. So it's same with judges. Yeah, they all do one category, but they might do 2 if the other one is game day. But they're very careful about where they place their judges. It's all about their background and expertise. So you're getting the best judges in every category. So for the different rounds, we asked about if judges see the same routines throughout the different rounds. And the answer is mostly yes. But because jazz is 3 rounds, because it's so big, most teams do pom and jazz or jazz and hip hop. So jazz is the one that just has so many dances in it. It's 3 rounds. And so what they do is they kind of split up the judges for that prelims round, and then the judging panels merge for semifinals. But then from semifinals to finals, the judges are the same. And that's how it is with pom, hip hop, game day too. So because there's just semifinals and finals for those rounds, the judges are the same. So same 6 judges are seeing the same routines from semifinals to finals.
That makes me curious if some judges are only there for prelims day.
Yeah, I think you're right. So we listened to Be a Show Off podcast, which is another great dance podcast that you can go listen to if you're interested in more information. And they had Varsity on their podcast and they explained it like a funnel. And they explained it like in college nationals, they have prelim group A and prelim group B. And so what will happen is there's still 6 judges for every dance in prelim group A, 6 for group B, and they'll take 3, so half of those judges from group A and bring them to semifinals, and 3 judges from group B and bring them to semifinals. So then you still have 6 judges for semifinals and finals, and they're watching the same dances. But then half of the judges from prelims are not seeing semifinals and finals.
No, yeah, that's a great visual.
And then we also asked a little bit about scoring. So judges are required to submit their scores immediately after watching a routine live, because we were curious if they had to submit their scores right away, if they were able to rewatch anything. And they did mention they have very strict procedures allowing for a replay in rare circumstances. So like if there's an illness, a float-in situation, a tiebreaker, or a very necessary clarification, then they can do a very specific replay. But the expectation is that the scoring occurs in real time. So if they miss something on the floor, they miss it and they're not scoring that. But they have really great judges, and I think they're very well versed in seeing the entire routine and making sure that they're judging that very fairly and live, which is very difficult. So props to those judges. It's just also helpful to know when you take into account that there is human error. Like we all make mistakes. The judges are not immune to that. And so there can be like things that they don't see on the floor. Like when people are wondering why maybe one team scored better than another, and maybe you saw things that the judges didn't see. And just remember, like, you get to watch this dance over and over and over again on YouTube or TikTok. The judges don't. They have to do that in the moment immediately. And so there's just a different level of accuracy when you're having to do it as you're watching it. I'm not a judge. I don't know how they watch a routine and if they like write without ever taking their eyes off of the dance, or if they're like looking down every once in a while and trying to just pick their eyes back up quickly. But I just have to imagine that that's a very difficult job. And so just keeping that into account when you're seeing those scores afterwards.
Yeah, I think we have to give judges grace because they're human too,
Yes.
and things will get missed, but just trusting that these are very, very veteran individuals and they know the sport and they know the rules. So they are doing it to the best of their ability. And I think that, you know, like you said, we can watch this over and over and over again. It's just different watching things live sometimes too and see
It's a different
everything.
view too. Like I feel like sometimes
Totally.
we're watching like an aerial view and like the judges are sitting right in front of the dance. So like they might,
Yeah.
they might see it very differently than we do.
They wouldn't be given the job if UDA didn't like thoroughly vet them, if UDA didn't thoroughly trust them to do this job. So I think that we as spectators can just try to have a little more faith in them that they're going to do what's best.
I also want to add too that UDA is in their 8th year of doing judges training, like a more specific, specialized judges training for all of the judges. That is very in depth too and helps them to be very consistent across the board. And so I think that also adds another level of trust for these judges, like that they are required to do this training and to all be on the same page. You're not getting like inconsistent scoring and like the ways that they're watching, the ways that they're scoring are all very structured. So we did a follow-up email to UDA to ask them a little bit more about their score sheet, how scoring works, just a couple additional questions that we had, and we have not heard back yet. So we will add some more scoring information into the next episode if we get that back. So if you have any questions that you want to know about scoring, feel free to send us a DM, message us on Instagram, TikTok. We just wanted to make sure we have all of the details before we explain it in depth and that we're getting them straight from the source so that it's as accurate as possible.
Okay.
Hopefully we'll have that to you before UDA Nationals comes around.
One of the last things that we wanted to talk about was some of the 2025-2026 updates. So these are things that coaches have had to reevaluate going into nationals this year. And the coaches have to look at the rules and regulations every single year for updates. I've heard interviews of coaches and choreographers that are analyzing the score sheet and the regulations every year to make sure that they are still in the clear on everything. So some of the ones from this year, the Spirit video, there has been a change. So the Spirit video used to count for 5 points in their total routine score. And I believe that was every routine. They got up to 5 points from their Spirit video. So the change this year is that they don't add the 5 points on, but a deduction will be applied to each performance if a team fails to submit a Spirit video that aligns with the requirements. Some examples of that would be they didn't submit it on time, or they don't have the 5 examples. And then there is also a score sheet update. The execution and choreography are now both a total of 60 points, with captions being the same as last season. So nothing else in terms of what the judges are looking for and the expectations of teams has changed, but now they're just a total of 60 points. There is a new skill allowed this year. They're allowing layouts, so that'll be fun to see if any teams pull that out. And then one game day update there, and I noted this already, but no verbal cue given leading into situational sidelines. Teams are expected to perform a sideline chant that's clear and appropriate for a specific game situation without the announcer saying what's going on in the game. A audience member or a judge should be able to tell what exactly they're trying to do from their specific game situation.
And then these are a few other miscellaneous changes. And this one, I'm not sure if it really is a change, but it was mentioned here in the updates. So they mentioned that prelims performance order will be in a random draw. Semifinals performance order will be a live draw. And then finals performance order will be in reverse rank. So I know that's always how it was. It was always in reverse rank for finals. Another one, hip overhead tumbling skills can include one connection, either airborne to airborne or non-airborne to airborne. So this is a change. You can do an aerial into a standing back tuck now. So that's 2 airborne skills back to back, like with no hands. So that's fascinating too. I can't even imagine doing an aerial into back. Like, how do you even do that?
I'm like trying to visualize it and I can't. Like you would
have to land in 2 feet. Like it would have to be an aerial where your second foot comes down, meets your first foot. You're in a plie, and then you just use that momentum to throw yourself into a back tuck. But I think like they're trying to increase the difficulty that teams can have without risking dancer safety. So I think that's where they're just like finding that balance right now of like, we're going to continuously like add things in slowly that we know can be done safely in this area, but they don't want to push it too far. So I feel like
that
this is a big jump, the airborne to airborne skill connection.
Yeah. That makes me wonder though, like why is the cutoff at 3 consecutive skills?
Yeah.
Like
probably because of the length
3
of the
is
floor.
safe, but 4 isn't.
Because if you're doing 3 connected skills, like especially if you're needing to like get momentum into that, you might have to do like a short run or a hurdle into them. Yeah. And then like the length that 3 large skills take is probably as far as
and
they
there
want
needs
to push.
To be a limit, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they have to
like,
set it somewhere.
You can't just flip the entire time and then your difficulty is through the roof. And also, I feel like it provides a little bit of separation between dance and cheer.
Yes, I agree with that. That's what I was picturing too, like tumbling passes and cheer, where they just do like back to back to back tumbling passes. That's starting to dip in the cheer category.
Yeah, there has to be some level of separation. So I think little rules like that also help keep a clear definition. Like, okay, if you want to go flip across the floor, like go do cheer. Let's focus on what we're here to do, and we're here to dance. I love the acro. It's fun to see.
Yeah, and I think it can add to a routine for sure. But like, totally. To a point where it starts to like take away from the routine.
Yes, absolutely. So I know that is a lot, but we set out for this episode to help you guys have a better understanding. We didn't want to overwhelm you with rules or to turn anyone into a walking UDA rulebook, but it was sort of to zoom out and give you a clear understanding of why routines look the way they do, why scores land where they land, and why nationals is about so much more than just what happens in the 2 minutes on the floor. These coaches and choreographers are putting in a lot of homework, really, in studying to make sure that they are following all these rules, that all of these deductions and penalties are not happening.
And honestly, walking through all of this, from spirit videos to safety rules to judging panels, it really just reinforces how intentional this sport is. Nothing is random, nothing is accidental. Every choice a team makes has to live inside the structure, and one that balances creativity, safety, fairness, crowd engagement, everything. They're thinking of so many different aspects of their performance, not just the choreography, not just the costuming. It takes a lot to create these routines and to make them fit inside the rules and regulations, and also push the box of creativity.
Yeah. Wow. They're doing so much more work than I think anyone would have thought. There's so much behind the scenes going on.
And when you dig into time limits, entrances and exits, props, performance space, safety rules, it becomes clear just how much discipline, planning, and trust goes into every single performance.
It also adds a lot of nuance to conversations that we see online every year about deductions, legality calls, judging decisions. So as we head into the Dance Super Bowl month, our hope is that you walk into nationals or your TikTok feed with a different lens. Instead of watching what you like, maybe you start noticing timing, spacing, transitions, prop usage, crowd engagement, and how teams navigate the rules that they're given.
If this episode helped you see the sport differently, go ahead and send it to someone who's gearing up for nationals or someone who always has questions about scoring. And if you have any further questions in preparation for nationals, send us a DM and we'll try to answer it for you.
A quick heads up, we are planning to go live throughout nationals weekend, so make sure that you're following us. I believe Instagram and TikTok notify when accounts that you follow go live. So you'll be able to see that, click on it, join us, because mostly during the breaks, we'll be breaking down dances, categories, who's advancing on to the next round, any of your real-time questions and commentary. We'd love to talk about it. We won't be physically attending nationals this year, but we'll be watching all weekend long. So you can join us at any point throughout the weekend. Let us know what real-time questions you have, what your thoughts are. We'd love to share them.
Thank you for breaking down the UDA score sheet with us. To stay on beat with all things college dance, make sure you follow us on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at 8Count Breakdown to keep up with all the college dance news.
And follow us on Spotify and subscribe on YouTube so you never miss a breakdown. And if you love the show, leave us a quick 5-star review. It really helps us. It really helps more people discover our show.
Today's episode of 8Count Breakdown was written and produced by Casey Rush and Shanyn Hill, editing by our team.
Information referenced in this episode was compiled from varsity.com, and the score sheets, as well as the rules and regulations, will be linked in our show notes.
And a huge thank you to UDA for answering all of our questions. They were so kind and generous in their responses and just making sure they gave us as many details as possible. And we just really appreciate their willingness to share everything with us
and help educate and provide insight for our listeners. I know I speak for both Shanyn and I when I say that we are very passionate about making sure that everybody is getting real, true, up to date, as much insider info as possible. But we want to make sure that you guys are getting real, true facts. And that's what we're here to do. And I'm so glad that UDA is able to help us through that. With that, we'll catch you right back here next week for all things college dance. This has been
8Count Breakdown.